Hi, and welcome to the Reclamation Project podcast. We are so glad that you're here, that you're listening, and hopefully that you are a part of the conversation. Today, we're kind of doing a one-off, and I think it's important that we talk about this subject because I think a lot of people encounter it, and we really need to look at how it impacts us. And the subject that we're talking about today is stress. And stress manifests itself a lot in different ways throughout our life, from just a physical standpoint. Stress can really put a burden on us and impact the way that we eat, the way that we sleep, the way that we just present ourselves in life and go through our lives. From an emotional standpoint, it can really hurt our relationships. It can cause just all kinds of crippling effects on how we talk to people, how we interact and engage people. And even from a spiritual standpoint, stress can really be a burden and really hurt the way that we look at God, the way that we encounter Him, the way that we have peace with ourselves. So there's a lot of different ways that stress really impacts us. So I think it's important that we talk through this and we talk through stress because we all encounter stress at one time or another in our lives, and we all work through it in different ways. And so we just want to talk about what stress does to us, how it looks, and really what we can do to navigate through it. And for me, Gary and I were talking about at lunch, what do we want to talk about next? What do we want to do next? What do we really want to hit on? And stress was one of the 2 or 3 topics that we came up with. And really it came out of my life this week even. My wife has quit her job, planned quitting of her job as of last week. And really, we've gotten to a point where the reality of that decision has come full force at us. And this week, it's really stressed me out from a standpoint of, is this doable? Is this something that we're going to be able to do? Because we had her leave her job so that she can be home with the kids and impact their development and really move them in a good way before they start going off to school and spending some time with them and just continuing to raise them better from that standpoint. And that's a decision that we made, but as we're sitting here now, we're looking at it and we're stressed out by money. Mm-hmm. We're stressed out by, was this a good decision? Was this something that we should be doing? And we're just seeing the impact of that. And I can tell you right now that it caused so much stress. It impacted work. It impacted just me. I was sitting on the couch the other day just thinking through all this stuff, and I realized I'm starting to get this depression coming over me, this negative emotional state coming over me, and I'm just like, I don't know if this is going to work, and I so much want it to work, but man, I feel like life is coming at me and coming at me fast, coming at me hard, and this is just another thing I just want it to stop. And it was this stress that was balling up inside my chest, inside my shoulders, inside just my brain, and it was kind of worrying me to a certain extent. I wasn't super worried, but the stress was creating worry and anxiety in itself. So all that to say is stress comes on us. How do we navigate through it? How do we change from this stressful state to come to a peaceful state? How does that look? And that's really what we're looking at today.
That's where if you spent a lot of time in the Bible and you have a faith part of your life, that's when it really gets real. And because when you read verses like Matthew 6 where he says, listen, I'm telling you, don't worry about what you eat or what you drink or what you wear. And I'm like, it says, isn't life more than food, drink, and clothes? And yes, but Salt River Project will not use that as a payment. They don't, my mortgage company doesn't care what verses I quote. So what happens when you get stressed, because it has, as Jeremy mentioned, it has an effect on all different kinds of your life. In a little later in that verse, he says, can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? Well, of course, the answer is no. But on the flip side, they've done studies about what stress does to you, and worrying can take years off your life. They've said, if you look, I think it's called Health One. They have a lot of health statistics, and their whole section on stress talks about if you have, we're talking about not just a stressful moment, but stress has become a habit in your life. You have it all the time. You have a 44% greater risk of a heart attack. If stress is something you deal with on a daily basis, you have 65% greater chances of some kind of immune deficiency disease. Your body under constant stress has a 44% greater chance of getting cancer or not processing cancer correctly, and then 50% chance of developing certain kinds of even mental issues. In the last few years, I've just been addicted to studying about the brain because, if God created us and He created our brain, I think it's really important to know how it works. And I remember reading where stress causes a production of cortisol in your brain. And it's a natural product, but it produces so much that the body really just can't use it all or incorporate it into the body. So that additional cortisol really starts to hamper how you think. It takes away your clarity. It starts to ruin your memory. And so just to say, I'm having a stressful day and just to throw it off, I think what we're trying to say in this podcast is, yes, we all have it, and how do we deal with it?
Yeah, and I think as you were talking right there, I think it does make a correlation to what the Bible says, because as I think about it, we often talk about taking a weight off your shoulders,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're going through a stressful day, a stressful situation, and you're just so engulfed in what it is and what's going on in your life, and you're trying just to navigate through it, how much better do you feel when someone comes and takes a burden off of your shoulder or says something nice to you?
Yeah.
The other day, I was going through this stressful situation, this stressful time, as I said, going through trying to figure out Katie being home and how that works with our budget and how that works with how we live and how we, it's impacting my sleep to a certain extent because she's getting up to do some work early in the morning and my kids wake up and I have to try to get them back to sleep. But it impacts all those things. And then the other day, someone came and said, "Hey, I need to talk to you." And I was just thinking, oh my goodness, here it comes. Just another thing coming at me this week. And they continued to say, "You know what? Hey, you did this really great. Thank you so much for doing this." And I was just like, whoa.
Yep.
This thing that I was looking at saying, oh my goodness, this is coming. Look at this wave, this tsunami-sized wave coming at me and just feeling it about to hit, and then it dissipates before it gets to me.
Yeah.
And I was just like so relieved that someone had said something nice to me rather than continue the onslaught of things coming at me. And I really think it does, as Christ says, like I said, is we bear each other's burdens.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Christ that said that, or is it Paul?
Well, Paul said it.
Paul said it. We're supposed to bear each other's burdens, right? Yeah. As we bear each other's burdens, as we are peacemakers, like we just talked about in our Attitude Adjustment series, as we're helping each other out and as we're loving on each other, as Acts talks about, in Acts 2:40 area, it talks about how the church was all about taking care of one another and giving to each other when each other was in need. If we have people in our lives doing that, how much less the stress builds up on our shoulders, how it takes stress off of our shoulders as well. And not only how if we have people like that in our lives, how if we become the people in other people's lives doing that, point. And inversely, if we don't, if we're, coming down on someone hard at work, if we're telling someone what a crappy job they did, if we're telling someone how poorly they thought through this process or whatnot, or if we're just lambasting someone, right? How we can be adding that stressful burden to them and impacting their physical, spiritual, emotional lives beyond that.
So stress comes in all kinds of shapes and forms, and and stress and anxiety are really close. They're hand holders. And when they get together and breed, it really does turn into debilitating stress and depression. And so stress is a big thing to look at. I was doing some Googling on the subject this week, and it said highest sources of stress for Americans. And I thought it was interesting. For 9 years in a row, it was either finances and relationship or relationship and finances. Each are those always jockeyed for first and second position until last year. The number one cause of stress for adults, according to the survey, was politics. And I'm thinking, for me, it's not, because I choose not to engage in it. I choose not to watch it, but it's everywhere. I mean, really since the election in 2000, it's everywhere, and everybody's got an opinion, and so it's really become a point of stress generation for us. And then, of course, number 2 was relationships and / children. And number 3 for last year was finances, and then health issues. Then they did a survey with kids. You're talking to kids and to parents. The number one stress producer for children was social media. And Jeremy and I were talking about that off air. Your Instagram, your Snapchats. People didn't like my Facebook post, and now cyberbullying, all of that is. So stress is real, and stress and anxiety is real. As Jeremy was telling you a little bit about his, I used to really suffer from really intense anxiety attacks. I'd usually wake up in the middle of the night, can't breathe. You think you're dying. I remember I would jump up and scare my wife. I couldn't catch a breath. I'd run into the living room, and that's when, people who try to be helpful would say, well, at that time you just need to pray, or read scripture. I couldn't get my breath. I couldn't even think. I was telling Jeremy off air that what I finally did is I created a triage CD. I had some great Chris Tomlin worship music and some David Crowder. In fact, I've always loved one of David Crowder band's song. It's called "Deliver Me." I would shake as I put my headphones on, and I would listen to this worship music, and I could actually sense my body slowing down, my heart rate slowing down, and the blood rushing back into my fingers. And at that point, I could pray or I could read scripture. So stress and anxiety is a very real thing, and depending on how you handle it or how you process it will dictate your next day, your next week, all your thoughts. And then if they affect your thoughts, it affects your behavior.
Well, and I want to piggyback off of something you said there just a second ago, which was kids and dealing with social media. I recently listened to a podcast, and I thought about doing a podcast on this, but I'd rather point people to this podcast because I thought it was really, really good. But it's by a group called The Minimalist. And minimalism in itself, we may do a podcast on that. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that.
Down the road. But they have a documentary out there on Netflix. And so I was listening to this podcast, and it was on technology. And it was just a couple of podcasts ago. You can probably find it. It's in the 100-something area episodes. If you want to look it up, look up the minimalist technology. And what they said in there, which I think is very congruent to stress, is that, with technology, we've kind of become slaves to our phones, slaves to our iPads, slaves to our computers even. But one of the things that they brought up that was very poignant to me was they're talking about a situation where you would be sitting there having dinner with someone, and your phone buzzes, and you automatically look at it. Or it goes. You hear the chime, and you kind of turn it over and look to see what it is. Mm-hmm. And instantly, in that moment, what you are doing subconsciously is telling that person who's sitting in front of you this thing that I don't even know what it is. I don't know what that beep meant. I don't know what that vibration meant. That thing is more important than you.
Yeah.
And I think that in that was very important for me. And what they went through is they talked about how these notifications that inundate us every single day, that go off on our phone, that vibrate our phone, that even for some of us who have Apple Watches or Fitbits will vibrate our wrist, those things become so inundated in our lives that we have to instantly turn and feel like we have to answer them right away. We have to look at them and make sure it's not something important. And there's a certain level of stress that comes with that is, okay, hey, I need to make sure that this person responded to my text message or to my Facebook post or to my Instagram post, or I have to get back to this person on this email right away. I mean, how many times do jobs require you nowadays to work from home by answering emails, and it's an expected form and of communication. Is you have to be on your phone all the time for work to answer emails and to really push that push that 8-hour day into a 10-hour day now, because you're sitting there and you're getting back to people right away. And if you don't, oh my gosh, it's stress city, because all of a sudden it's like, why didn't you answer my email? It's very, very important, even though it could have waited to the next day.
It just really does become a natural response. And I don't know if it was stress, but it is that curiosity of like, who's calling me? Could it be something important? I was speaking at a church recently, and as I was walking up to the microphone, I had my phone in my pocket and it vibrated. And just instinctually, I picked it out of my hand before, and I looked at it, and then I realized what I was doing, and I said, you know what? I apologize but if anyone's interested, the Vikings just went up 7 points. I have sports coming as notifications to my, and it. I don't know if it was stressful, but just the fact that I am so addicted to responding to that is a generator of the stress.
Well, let me continue that. So we talk about that, and we have those instant behaviors that we've kind of grown and been instilled in us by our phones to make us slaves to our phones, and make our phones make us work rather than us making our phones work to a certain extent. But in this podcast, he said, you know what? I had to realize that, hey, if I have an app out there that I haven't used in 30 days, I'm getting rid of it. If I don't foresee using it in the next 30 days, I'm getting rid of it. So I cleaned up and decluttered, and decluttering, I think, is a huge way to rid yourself of stress, whether it be through phone apps or through just life. But that's the whole minimalism thing, right? And anyway, so he said, not only did I do that, and I decluttered my phone of apps, and I used the 30-30 kind of method. Am I going to use it in 30 days? Have I used it in 30 days? If not, it's gone, no matter what. And so I did that to a certain extent. And then his next point was, and then what I did is I turned off all my notifications. And
now you're getting personal.
Yeah, that was a little. So I said, you know what? That actually sounds pretty peaceful. I'm going to turn off my notifications. So I went through my phone, in my iPhone. In case you need to know how to do it, you go to General or Settings, and then you go to Notifications, and you can toggle each one off. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I know most of you have never been there before, but I turned off all my notifications.
Wow.
And except for 2. One was text messages, and the other was bank accounts.
Yep.
Because I have a notification that if my bank account goes low, it pops. And so I kind of need to know that. But those are the 2 that notify me all the time. That's it.
Wow. I'm impressed.
And it's been difficult, I tell you what. But how much more peace has come from not having to look down and see 4,339 emails sitting there that I feel like I have to open each one to get rid of that stupid bubble that sits up there. Or I have 10 voicemails, and yes, I turn the voicemail notification off because I have 10 voicemails, and half of them are from people that I've talked to since they've left the voicemail.
Yeah.
I've learned to turn those things off, and by doing so, I've been able to put down my phone more. And when I get home, put down my phone and not pick it up for a couple hours, and that is the hardest thing to do. And my wife might say, no, you don't. And I say, I'm so much better than I used to be. but the stress and the level has left because of that. And I'm on a soapbox right now, but the stress level that has left because of that, and the ushering of peace as a result of the leaving of stress has just been incredible. And so that is one way that I see that, technology is a big burden on us. It's weighing on our shoulders, and we need to get it off.
You just, I don't know if this is good or bad, but you just identified for me one of my stress things. When I look at my phone and I see the little red bubble with 20 in there, it stresses me out.
Yeah.
And even if I don't care about the emails, like I got to get that red bubble off because that means there's something there. And how silly that a 6x3 piece of plastic and glass really dictates my life,
Well, and then I'll tell you what is, after I've gotten rid of these, I have found myself going back to, because I know that they're in there now. They're just not popping up. So I found myself going, okay, I need to look at my email real quick. And I realized how just stupid that is.
Yeah, we've been
that
trained.
I feel like I need to look at my email. It's like I look at my email all day at work. Why do I need to look at my email when I get home? It just it baffles me. But we've been conditioned to do that.
Yeah. So when you look at verses of scripture that says, not to worry, let peace arise in your heart. That we haven't. 1 Timothy or 2 Timothy says that we're not to have this spirit of fear or anxiety and stress really are fear generators, and we're not to have that. He's given us a sound mind, a peaceful mind, but yet we don't access that. And I think sometimes stress happens that you can't control, and that's understandable. But everything I think we've mentioned to this point is like we really do hold the remote control on a lot of things that produce stress in our life.
We add stress to our lives unknowingly.
Yep.
By expectations that we've put on ourselves or that society's put on us. Technology being one, but we feel like we have to look a certain way. We have to feel a certain way. Just from looks. I mean, you feel like you have to, I have to dress a certain way, so I have to make sure that these pants are ironed and this shirt is pressed and all, that I have. This is one big one for ladies, maybe some gentlemen too. But I when my wife stopped working recently, she said, "Oh, it's so great not to have to put on makeup in the morning anymore, to have to be presentable for public consumption, so to speak."
If you're a man and that bothers you, you really need to give me a call.
Hey, there's Skyliner.
I know.
But that there's that burden, and oh my gosh, to be a woman, to be a woman and have so much more stress than it does for a man. A man can, like me, put on gym shorts and a t-shirt and put a hat on in the morning. Yet women have to go to the gym, feel like they have to get dressed up and present themselves to other women so they don't get judged. I mean, we put that on ourselves, and if we could just remove those burdens from ourselves and not try to please everyone by how we present ourselves physically or through eyesight, and I don't know what the word is there for that, but if we could do that a little bit more, while still kind of hey, you can't just go naked or anything, but but by keeping some social norms, but getting rid of other ones that, hey, you know what, I don't have to put on makeup to go to the gym. I don't have to be matching to go to the gym. It's funny. My wife says that you can tell the girls who are single and you can tell the girls who are married, because the girls who are single are doing themselves up really, really well to go to the gym. And I've actually noticed that lately. I've been looking at it, I'm like, well, she got ready for the gym. Yep. She didn't.
Married, single, yeah. I think the Bible verses that we've talked about, or you would do a word study on worry, and really all find at their core it's an idea of trust and faith, that we really trust God. Even your parenting, I see a lot of people are stressed just by their parenting style. They call them the helicopter parents, but if you're so worried about your children that you have to hover over them all the time and you don't give them the freedom to be kids, they just walk outside to get the newspaper and you're about to have a heart attack. I mean, that's self-induced stress. Yeah. So it's all those things in life. Technology, maybe your parenting style. We already talked about relationships. If you don't trust your spouse, then you're freaking out looking at phone records and checking emails and mileage on your car. So again, a lot of those things we have control over where the stress comes in, and sometimes it's just life, things that are out of your control. And I think depending on which kind of stress it is the plan you take on how to deal with it.
Well, and I'd say also, as you say, parenting.
Yeah.
And sorry, I'm going backwards to go forwards here. But as you talk about parenting, I also think it's not only how you treat your kids that causes stress, but how other people look at you with how you parent.
Yeah.
I think the grandparents biggest job is to decipher how their children are not parenting their kids right. Not that, I mean, my parents don't do that, but I've seen it being done. My parents, they do it a little bit. And if you're listening, I love you anyways, but, and I know you love me, but I don't need to parent the way that my parents parented.
Right.
And I've learned from what they've done well and from what they haven't done well.
Yep. Correct.
And I'm still learning from them in that respect. But how grandparents, view kids, how when you're at, geez, this is a dated reference, but how when you're at the mall with your kids,
wow,
those things don't really exist anymore, right? Except for a couple. But when I've heard so many stories of friends where when they're at the mall with their kids, they're getting nasty looks from people because of, hey, you're not paying close enough attention. Well, hey, this may be the only time where I get a break from my kids is they're in a social atmosphere. So I'm making sure that they don't, kill themselves. But that's pretty much, what I'm trying to get out of here with is no deaths and no hospital visits and no causing that for anyone else either. Outside of that, they can do whatever, but there's other parents there that just look at you with that side eye little thing and
they got the child harness on their 13-year-old, Yeah, that's hard.
But yeah, there's stress that is induced by, and I think this encompasses everything I've said for the last 10 minutes, but other people's expectations, really induce a lot of stress. And so removing what, and maybe not caring about what other people's expectations help you navigate through that. So now we can move forward with how do we navigate through it? So how do we navigate through stress?
Well, I think there's some keys, and it's stuff we've even talked about before in different aspects on our podcast, but it's always, truth versus lie. So I think the minute you feel stress, I think you need to stop and identify the source of the stress. What is it? What's actually causing the stress? And then you put it up to the grid. Is this true or is it not true? But a lot of times our stress is just not true. It's lies we're telling ourselves or a belief system that we have. So you identify the source, and then you hold it up to the microphone. You hold it up to the, what's the word I'm looking for?
Microscope.
Thank you, Jeremy. You hold it up to the microscope and say, is the generator of this stress, is it true or if it false? And then you know how to go. Like when you're doing your own taxes and you answer number 5, and then depending on yes, you go left, and right, you go
right.
Correct. That would be right.
Correct, you go right.
Correct, you go right. That is correct. So that's one of them. And then I think you change some of the metaphors that you're saying around that stress. Like, oh, my children are just awful. Well, no, your children aren't awful. They're sugared up.
Or your expectation is to your expectation of what your kids should act like.
Oh,
I've had friends who they expect their kids at 2 years old to act like they're 10.
Yeah,
and it's just that's not who they're going to be. So you need to change your expectation there, just like you need to stop believing the lies, like you said.
Yes,
you need to change your expectation there.
Right. I mean, if you have an expectation that your kid's going to act like 10 at 2, you're looking for stress. Stress is coming to you, at a theater nearby. And then you change the metaphors, and then we go back to, it seems like almost every podcast we find a way to go back to one of our first podcasts on reframing, that you just say, let's change the meaning of this, and then I change the corresponding feeling with it. So we do have some control in how stress affects us, because we do know stress left unchecked does all those things we talked about at the beginning of it ruins relationships, it ruins health, it does all of that. So I think we have a responsibility to jump on stress and not let it run its course.
And I think the big part of all that is, as you talked right there about identifying the stress, I think the first thing you do before that is something that I've been learning to do more with children and even myself to a certain extent, is breaking state.
Yes.
And so can you just talk about breaking state, just how to do that in a time of stress?
Oh, in NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, they have a really big section on state. And state is your thoughts and belief systems and your emotions at one point in time. And I'll give you an illustration. So, your 3-year-old's downstairs sitting at the table with a glass of milk. You come downstairs, you had a horrible night's sleep. You just got in a fight with your spouse. You answer your email on your, you just get a text on your Apple Watch that says you're being laid off. Now you walk in the kitchen and your 3-year-old spills his milk, it rolls across the table and on the floor, and you're saying, Johnny, I told you not to do that. You know you're not supposed to sit at the table without a sippy cup lid, and you go off and off and off. So same scenario. Your baby's down there at the table with milk without a lid. You're coming down the stairs. You had a fantastic night. Your husband just surprised you with a getaway weekend you're going to have. You answer the text on your Apple Watch where your boss just told you got a 12% raise. You walk in the kitchen and you see the milk going across the table and on the floor, and you're saying, now, baby John, you know you're not supposed. Now, next time, I want you to put a lid on for mommy, right? And what is different? The kid, all the scenarios are the same. The only difference is your state of mind. We have control. So when you talk about breaking state, when I'm stressed, where I am, you do something. You change your position. You change your room. You do something, you cause a distraction for yourself. You walk outside, you put on some music, you do something. You have to do something physically and tangibly to break that state you're on. You know, sometimes in my counseling, when someone's on a rant and I have to break state because I see it really going dark, sometimes I have to swear. Sometimes, especially when I know that it'll shock them. My ex-pastor just swore at me, and it stops them in their track. And then I'm like, done. I have your attention. I broke state, and I've learned how to do that myself because I'm an emotional guy, and when my emotions go, they can just go. So I've had to learn little tricks to break state, and that's how you really start to keep stress, at a bay for a little bit when you do that.
Well, and that's what I had to do when, like I said, did I say during the podcast or maybe it was as we're talking about the podcast, as I was getting stressed out about all this stuff with Katie being home and finances and sleep schedule and all this stuff. Monday, I have all this stuff going on, and I get home and my daughter had lost my AirPods. My day had my databases at work had gone down for 60-70% of the day, so we weren't able to get out the work that we needed to. I had come home and something else had changed that wasn't the way that I thought it should go. And so I'm sitting there on the couch as my wife's cooking dinner, and I'm just like, just start getting into this funk, this almost depression, this emotional state, and just thinking, okay, nothing's going right today. Everything just keeps going wrong. Everything just keeps happening. And then on top of this, I'm thinking through all this stuff with Katie and her coming home and sleep schedules and finances. And I'm diving deep down into it in my mind of, okay, how do we get this thing to work? How do we get the finances to work? Does she have to go back to work? Does she have to do this? Do we have to do this? Oh my goodness. All this stress, all this emotional state. Okay, hey, I just need to stop. I need to get up and I need to walk away. My wife even said during that time, are you okay? I'm like, oh, no. No, but I'm okay with that. And then I realized I can't be okay with that. I need to get up. I need to move. If I continue down this road, I'm going to be cranky. I'm going to be upset. I'm going to be in this just stressful, anxiety-filled ball over here, bordering on possible, getting depressed.
Yep.
I need to get away from this because if I keep continuing down this road, I'm going to just be in a horrible state for the rest of tonight and tomorrow. Might even encompass the whole week. Who knows? Yeah. So I had to get up and I had to do something different, and I had to walk away from the place where I was sitting thinking about all this. And that broke state for me that night.
And then as you're walking away, then you can start to invoke some of these other things. So you start to reframe. You're walking away. So what you were doing, what they call stream of consciousness. If you just let that stream go, it takes you way downstream. Yeah. And but you start to walk away, then you start that reframing process. I know it's going to be tight, but my wife's going to be home with my kids. I don't want somebody else raising my kids. Yeah. You know how my kids are going to benefit from my wife being around here? So you start to change the meaning to all that, and then emotionally it starts to change those corresponding emotions. And we can have victory over stress. Some people, it's a chemical deficiency. I understand that, and if you need that for your anxiety, I more power to you. But I would love for you to try to take an intentional, proactive approach at keeping stress at arm's length and see if that just doesn't change the function of your day and the outcome of the daily events of your life.
Well, like I said, we all have stresses. We all have these hurdles, these hardships of stress that we have to get over, get around, get by in order to keep on going. If we don't, it does get us in those states of anxiety. It does get us in those states of depression. It does get us in this negative place that impacts our physical well-being, our health, our spiritual well-being, our emotional well-being. It affects our energy levels, our lives, our family, our relationships, our just everything about us.
Yep.
And so I think we need to do that as we get in these stressful times, is realize, A, it's not that bad.
Yep.
B, we probably need to break state and get away from it all. And then we need to identify what the stress is and go from there, as Gary said earlier. So in all that, don't let stress rule your life. Don't let stress become the over-encompassing part of who you are for this hour, this day, this week, this month, whatever it is. Just know that there's a way to navigate through, that we are, as Gary said, kind of the masters of. We hold that remote control as to how stress can lead us and how it can dissipate before us. But we can also do that for other people.
Mm-hmm.
We can be stress inducers or stress diffusers.
Yep.
So know that the people that you're encountering today, whether you know them, whether you don't, whether they're the person at Chick-fil-A who's taking your order, or the person who lives in your house, whether they're a neighbor, a coworker, whatever, the way that you encounter them, the way that you engage them, the way that you choose to speak to them or act towards them, that can either induce stress or it can diffuse stress.
Yep.
So please, please, please be a diffuser.
Yep.
Be a person who would rather say the nice thing than say the snarky thing.
Yeah.
That's hard for me.
Yeah.
I would much rather be sarcastic than uplifting and encouraging. I am not Air One.
Yeah.
But instead, I'm more of, KUPD.
Yeah.
But
Heavy metal.
Be that help, be that voice, be that source of encouragement, be that source of love. That's who we're called to be.
And if you need a spiritual flavor to some of this, I think Jesus gave us a perfect way to deflect and change state. Because in Matthew 6, when he was talking about not worrying about what you eat or drink or what clothes you wear, he says this, that seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, then all these things will be added unto you. So if I change the focus, instead of focusing on those things I don't have and I may not have, and to the things that I do have, those things all have a way of working out, and all those things will be added unto you. So, yeah, as Jeremy said, work on stress yourself and go around and be a stress diffuser. It sounds like kind of like an 80s movie, huh? Who are you going to call stress diffusers? That would be a great movie.
Or it sounds like an essential oil accessory.
Stress diffusers.
But what's limited my stress in doing this is not only talking through it, but the fact that we did this whole podcast without stopping once.
Yeah, that's amazing. And now that you say that, I'm stressed about how we're going to finish.
Yeah. So I don't have to edit as much.
There you go.
I just have to EQ. That would be great.
Yep.
Less stressful in a couple weeks when I do that. Anyways, we want you to be able to have less stress in your life, live with less stress in your life, live with more peace.
Yep.
And so doing those things that we talked about, we think will help out. There's more than that. Don't get us wrong, but this is a jumping off point.
If you have any secret things that you do to diffuse stress or to change state, drop us a line and give us some hints, and we can share them later. And if they want to do that, Jeremy, what do they do?
Well, you can do that in a couple places, and most of them are social media for us. One is Facebook at facebook.com/RP Podcast. Then you can go to Instagram at RP Podcast, and you can always direct messages there. etc. And then Twitter at the RP Podcast. Those are our social networking platforms. Beyond that, you can also look up any of our old podcasts, including the one that Gary referenced about reframing, at rppodcast.com. And we have all of our podcasts up there on our podcast tab, so you can check them all out. And the newest is first, the oldest is last, so you can see that there. And we'd love to hear from you on any of those ways, or if you know us personally and you want to text us or email us or talk to us, we would love to hear from you as well. We want you to become part of the conversation and really tell us your story. And maybe it'll help someone else out, and we can redirect it to someone else going forward. But nonetheless, we would love for you to not only listen, but also be a part of the conversation. But we do thank you for listening to this, and thank you for tuning in this week. We're so glad that you're here, and we hope that you have a great week, and hopefully it is a little bit more stress-free. So if it isn't, let's try to make it more that way. Thanks for listening again, and we will see you next time.